Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second of the ABS automated batch system training for grant recipients. And the objective of it is to give you some background on the automated batch system, which is the new system we're going to be moving to. And we're hoping to cover these three sections. So the ABS rollout program and process, just to give you a bit of comfort in terms of what the different stages are and how they relate to the current batch process. How to log in and navigate the ABS. We know that always the first steps are the most challenging, so just a little bit of guidance on how to do that, and some bulletin updates for grant recipients. So there's some things that we've observed over the last couple of months in batches that have been submitted that might be worth sharing with all the grant recipients. Section 1. I think Ruth, you called to cover this one.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So why we're moving to the ABS, some of you will already have been putting batches together and some of you will be new to the process. So for those of you who are moving from the manual Excel form onto ABS, there's a few reasons why that's happening. Ideally, it would have been straight onto this system, so appreciate the changeover. So the reason why it's the automated system is that we can then put all of the batches in one location, which will massively help with calculation of headroom, cumulatives, your cap information, and give you live feedback on that rather than having to keep that separately. But make it much easier for us to be transparent with that data and manage the data as well. So for things like queries, escalations, we can quickly open batches and sometimes get them turned around within half an hour if it's quick things we need from yourselves. We can approve batches in any order. So that's a real bonus. So if there's a batch that's been slowed down for some reason, or we've had to escalate it up to the department, we can still approve batches later on, so you can still get your delivery moving. So the measures, as you put the measures in, some of the reasons for batches going back and forth is they might have been in the wrong area for EE and LCH. Good thing about the ABS is they're already contained in drop downs, so there's no need to think about where they need to go. It's automatically calculated. And then the last benefit there is that you can edit previously submitted batches. So all you do is request an edit, and provided the figures are all correct, we can turn that round fairly quickly, much quicker than we can with the manual system.
Expected reading. So the tools that you have been given from the TAF are still useful tools. And I understand that there's been an update to some of those tools recently as well, reflecting the solar PV update policy. So those tools are still really useful to help the grant recipients understand how to structure batches, because I understand it's not the standard way you do it. So it's a good way to plan that out before you go into the ABS. But batches are all submitted through the ABS, so they're prepared and submitted through the ABS. So the existing tools from the TAF will help you understand how to structure batches, but all that information needs to be input and submitted through the ABS going forward. And we have uploaded the historic batches that have been submitted manually, so you shouldn't have to submit those yourselves, the historic ones. What I would ask is that if you do see any discrepancies, just highlight them to the help inbox so that we can address them for you. So this diagram just quickly shows the slight difference between the current manual batch process and the new batch process using the ABS. So in terms of the assessment process, so everything from submission of the batches through to assessment and approval of the batch will all occur within the ABS. I think the key difference here is that normally the grant recipient would coordinate that offline, develop a spreadsheet, and then submit that to the help inbox function, which would then travel for email. The benefit of having batches created and submitted through the ABS is that at any point in time, you as the grant recipients will be able to see the status of all the batches. So there won't be a situation where you're not quite sure about where the status of your batch is sitting. Just a real benefit. Just to mention here, we recognize that there are two key structures. There's the single local authority delivering their own batches within their own local authority, and there are also consortia. So the ABS does take that into account in terms of access requirements. So you can for example, for consortia, have a number of people creating batches within the ABS, but they don't have the authority to submit batches to the DP. That allows the lead local authority to have that that opportunity to review batches before they do get submitted, which I think is already happening through the manual process. By default, we're giving every member that requests access model 1, which means that they could submit to the delivery partner, and that's just recognizing that most of the projects on HUG2 are that single local authority and batch model. If you have, I know with some of the larger grant recipients, or they do have particular requirements where they want to have just 2 or 3 people being able to submit to the delivery partner, please drop us an email and advise who should and shouldn't have access to submit to the delivery partner, and we'll get that reflected.
So when you log in, literally we'll put your email address and password in that you've requested from us, and you just sign in there. So when you first go in and change your email, you may need to go back to the login page and then log in. That's what it looks like. This is the page you will see first off, and this is just your front end dashboard for information. We tend not to use this dashboard. It does have some interesting information in it, but when we're actually using and managing lists, we go straight over to the left, and then I think you only have one on there, and you can pin it to the top, and it's this HUG2 batch application form version 3.1. So you just click on that square there. So you'll be able to see this dashboard, and this is the most useful dashboard that will have a list of all of your applications. So you'll see at the top, they'll be created by me and assigned to me. So depending on your access and where it is in the process, you may have it in both of those two. So depending on whether it's been assigned back to you. And then on each page, you'll see whether something's in draft. So only yourselves will be able to see it. Where it is in progress, so once it's been submitted. And over here, you can also look at if you've withdrawn an application. So if you decide to withdraw an application completely, you can go in there and you can see what information that is for your records. So when you go in, we do advise you to change your viewpoint. This is the standard setup that you'll see, but there's a couple of pieces of information that are really key when you're going forwards with your batches. The first of those is your batch ID. Once you submit to us, each batch will be given a unique code, and that's the code that we will be referencing back to you. And should you need to amend or go back to a historic batch, that's the number that we will need from yourselves. So on this page, if you go across to the right, there is an I there. We click on the I and just type into the box there, batch ID. You see it comes up with a box there, batch ID. Click on the box, supply. And now if we scroll across to the right, you'll see that there's a column there that says batch ID. And this is the unique number. Really easy to remember, these unique numbers that you can just copy and paste. The next thing we usually do is drag this across to the left because it's one of the things we use most often. So usually drag it all the way over to the left there so you can see it on the front page and you don't have to scroll all the time. The second piece of information is current step. So if we click on current step, if you can't see it in your list, you can just type it into that box. And if you click apply, and this will show you where you are in the process. So the progress is just a general bar, but it doesn't actually tell you the specific step you're at. You go across to the right here, current step, and we'll drag it over to the left. And you can see there that it's for grant recipient approval. So this batch here hasn't been submitted yet. It's waiting to be submitted to the delivery partner. So we'll also point out where it says DP approval. That doesn't mean Depeche has a lot of work. That means delivery partner. So it'll go through to the assessment team. And for each application, you'll see all of your information in there. This is one that's been a historic test batch, for an example. This is also the page where you add in new batches, new item up there. And when you're able to add batches, you'll see that it's just a drop-down system. So you pick your financial year, and then for project, you click on the icon there, and it'll come up with the project, and that'll be either the consortia or the individual local authority. And then you'll see as you go down, it starts to populate these other areas, and you can just go through picking the information as you're going through, adding information. Where you're adding information into boxes, just make sure you click into the box and not onto that drop down. So if you click into the box, it'll then come up with the drop down that you need to add the information in. And that's the basics of getting around there. Just go into this previous in progress batch to show you the next bit. So the next piece of information that's useful for you to know is over here on the right. Where it says, when it says widgets up there, if you click on show more on the right, it'll show you exactly the step-by-step what happens in the progress of your batch. So at the moment, it needs to be approved to be sent into the delivery partner. Once you've sent it into us, this is where we assess it. And all of these steps will be shown on that. The current step is what shows these words here. So you'll be able to see an overview of where you are with those. The second piece on this page over to the right is this comments. So if we click on the comments, you can see here that you can add information in here. And this is where, if you're using a different numerical system for your batches, you can put notes in here for yourself. So you could say batch 1, and then you can have a list of notes in there that could be for yourself. If there's information you want to provide us with, for example, you have homes that might have higher measures, or there's a difficulty with a home, then you can also type in there. And on the right, there's 2 places where you can add information. You can either add at the bottom of this application, or on the right there, you can upload files. So if we need evidence, for example, if you want your doors to be in measure B rather than measure C, and we need evidence that it's essential for the system to be implemented, that's when you would upload your evidence there, your report or notes or quotes from people. And if you did want to withdraw, that's the withdraw down there. So that's the basics of getting around on there. So on these, we've got all the screenshots for you that you can follow through. Oh, the other thing I didn't say was, there at the bottom, there is a rows per page, but that goes up to 100. So if you've got more, you can see more and then scroll through pages like you would on other list websites. We've got here how to add in fields. We've got their batch ID and current step are the 2 that we use most often. We've also got here the widgets and the show more, so that shows you current step. And then comments and uploading any documents is on that page as well. So if you want to amend batches that are already on there, we do send a batch amendment request through to the HUG assessments email. And what we'll need for that is we'll need the batch ID that you want to amend. As I say, that's what we use for all of our identification across all of the grant recipients. What our team will do is we will unlock the specific batch for editing, and you'll get a notification, and then you'll be able to go in and edit the information that you need in there. One thing to note when you're doing that, though, that it will, if you are amending a batch, it will not automatically recalculate any cumulative. Therefore, it's worth checking that where you're changing the numbers, it won't affect the cumulative. The only changes will be made once it's actually approved, and then the numbers go into the pot. So until that is, any changes are approved, it will show previous numbers on there. So you can't necessarily rely on amendments to show those cumulative. And then this is coming soon. What is going to be added to your authorities within your account is that you can select batches and then receive batch details back. So you can request a PDF copy if you know a batch number. It'll give you an overview of the batch details of anything within your grant recipient or consortium. And then when you request it, you will receive a PDF of that batch for your records as well. And that's an automated response back. So it doesn't take, it's not somebody having to take time to get that information across to you. Okay, so that's a quick view of how to get on and how to log in. Just going to go through a quick bulletin and update for some recent news that Melissa's going to go through.
So just some quick notices for everyone to be aware of. First one's more of a tip, I would say. But if you have any difficult or complicated homes that might have higher costs associated to them, we sort of recommend that they're separated out into their own batch, so they're not holding up the delivery of other homes that might go through the assessment much quicker. And then on the next slide, Dipesh is just going to quickly talk about how the financial year and the winter break will affect batch submissions. But before that, we just have a couple of policy updates. The first one being that PV solar panel measures will be moving from a grade B to a grade A for the ABS only. So that's kind of a benefit of moving on to the ABS system as well. But just to note that you can't go back through your previous batches and amend them to move the solar PV to a grade A retrospectively. It's only for the future batches as you move on to the ABS system. The next one is that private rented sector has a 4 property cap per landlord. The only exemption to this is if it is private rented homes owned by a charitable or non-profit organisation, and then that 4 property cap can be exceeded. And the last one is that PAS on-site compliance costs and ventilation costs, they must be separated out into separate line items in table 4D in the capital expenditure table. They can't be lumped together anymore. It's more for data collection purposes.
So I'll cover winter break. So this is over the Christmas period. So grant recipients are welcome to submit batches throughout that period, but just be mindful of two key dates. 15th of December, it's the final date that we can guarantee assessment in time for the December payment run. It's just a slightly different date to previous months. So we just wanted to highlight that here. And also close of business 22nd of December to the 2nd of January. Hoping none of the grant recipients are working during that period, but there will be a pause on assessments. So until the 2nd of January when we come back, and we'll progress assessments immediately from then. And moving into the financial year, we just wanted to highlight that in terms of the batch form, it does allow for split between batches between financial year, so you can percentage split them. And what we'll be looking at is, as we get closer to the financial year, is that those splits into the next financial year are higher than the ones in this financial year, and that's just to make sure that delivery, or proposed delivery, aligns with delivery as well. So just highlighting that here as well.
Okay, the last slide just talks about items that can be moved into your CapEx or A&A costs from the measures. So the first one is costs that can be removed from your measure costs in table 4A into your capital expenditure or A&A budget, and that is your waste management costs and pipework and radiator costs. That can help reduce down your measure costs that are listed in table 4A and might prevent the need to go to department for approval or rejection on those measures. So that can just help manage the assessment process. And then the next few costs beneath that are costs that you could be pulling out into your CapEx or your A&A, and that's PAS costs, ventilation costs, which again need to be separate from your PAS on compliance costs, your EPC assessments and your survey costs. And then the final one there is costs that need to go under your A&A and cannot be listed on the form, and that is cavity wall extraction or failure. So anything with extraction or failure costs can't be included and must be put into your A&A budget.